So thank you for joining us, everyone.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. So I'm going to start with introducing everyone. Tom, tell us a bit about yourself.
I'm Tom Lamb. I'm founder and CEO of Willow. And Willow's a virtual coach that's going to help solve the obesity crisis.
Excellent. Sally?
I'm Sally Ng, Executive Director at Accelerate, which is the brand new accelerator for knowledge-based companies and business center that's based in Knowledge Park and in Fredericton.
I'm Philip Curley. I'm CEO of HotSpot Parking. We're launching here in Fredericton August 6th.
Excellent. Thank you very much. So I guess the first question I'm going to ask is, Sally, what is Startup Weekend, since you were the facilitator there?
Yeah, so Startup Weekend, I got involved a couple months back. Startup Weekend is based in Seattle with the headquarters, but it's spread across 120 countries around the world. Its mission is to inspire and educate entrepreneurs and be the first step in entrepreneurship. So it brings together developers, designers, business professionals, marketing folks from completely different backgrounds and experience levels, and teaches them how to launch a startup.
Excellent. So Tom, tell us what your product and idea was at the very start.
Original idea was I was going to build a virtual coach that helped people to lose weight and adopt healthier habits by basically doing things artificially that coaches do for their clients right now. I knew, having a background in computer science, gone to RMC in Queens, done engineering computer science, I knew that it was possible to do this type of a thing, and I also knew it was fairly large, so obviously we had to scale it down quite a bit.
What was your original idea when you first came to Startup Weekend?
So originally we wanted to make it so you could find parking from your cell phone, so the spaces would be available and you could see them. We realized that we should first off make it so you can pay with parking from your cell phone in smaller municipalities, and then we'll eventually get there, one step at a time.
Sally, what was your role at Startup Weekend? And also, is there any future Startup Weekend events coming up?
Yeah, so my role at Startup Weekend is being the facilitator. So it's a volunteer position. Startup Weekend headquarters sends me all across the globe facilitating events to help guide companies. The neat part is our next Startup Weekend New Brunswick is being held on November 15th to 17th in Moncton this time. And there's also another Startup Weekend, the first ever, in St. John's, Newfoundland. That's going to be in November as well. So it's pretty awesome that we have two coming up in just a couple months.
First question is I'm going to ask Tom. How did you come up with your idea, and what made you decide to join Startup Weekend?
Well, I came up with my idea as a personal trainer that was had a variety of different roles and had been in the personal training scene for a long time. And I really felt that the software that was available to help trainers was lousy. And half of it was built by personal trainers that didn't understand software. Half of it was built by software guys that didn't understand fitness. So I was looking all around. I just couldn't find anything, and I really was convinced that there was some things that could be done with software that would really make it easier for people to adopt healthy lifestyle habits, and they would make it easier for coaches and trainers to help more people lower their costs, make it more accessible. Right. So I just was really attracted to the startup scene because it seemed very collaborative, very supportive. I was training a lot of people that were IT guys, and I really liked the way they, just the passion that they had, the intelligence, and just the work ethic, and I wanted to be part of that. I wanted to be part of something that was challenging. So when the opportunity, luckily you told me about Startup Weekend, and I jumped on it. I love that, the idea of like this condensed, I guess, crucible of bringing things in and just generating an idea or generating something really valid out of 36 hours of intense work, and the amount of networking that happened was amazing. So that's why I came there.
So you had a pretty stacked team at the beginning. How did you manage to recruit all those people?
I was lucky that a couple key individuals came over, and I was able to pitch them very fast. And I didn't realize it because at Startup Weekend you really don't have any idea who anyone is until you start talking to them. But once I got one or two key individuals, a lot of other people started taking notice of my project and trying to figure out why these individuals were interested.
Gotcha. Yeah. So one of the things that does happen a lot over Startup Weekend is some people will actually join other teams. That happens kind of like the first night. But one of the core things that happens is the product changes a lot throughout the weekend. Mm-hmm. How did your product change from the start to like the middle and like now to where it is today?
Absolutely. The biggest thing that we changed was we actually wanted to be able to tell people where they could park, like where parking spots were available. But Deshpande had a speech here, and he said, cut everything into the smallest pieces you can possibly cut them into, but there's a much better chance you'll be able to do it then. So what we actually are doing right now is we're providing a mobile payment service that for individuals to actually pay for parking in smaller municipalities that don't have the scale of, say, Montreal.
What about you, Tom?
Actually, that speech was pivotal for me as well, because I was coming in with a really strong idea of what I wanted to do, and it was fairly large, and the scale was a little bit overwhelming, and I was getting a lot of pressure inside of my team, even just to say, like, look, that's because we literally I wanted to build a virtual coach that would interact with someone and improve their health, which is just even to say it sounds like a fairly massive undertaking, you know, Siri for fitness, if you will. So when I heard that speech, and I kind of was still fighting the idea, and I realized how ridiculous that was because I'm listening to a billionaire basically tell me, like, it's too big, let's chop it into about 100 pieces and pick the smallest one. And then I went back and I said to the team, I'm like, guys, you're right, you know, like I totally ego moment here, and let's figure out something that's very small and manageable, and it's going to get us just a little bit closer to our long-term goal. So.
And you guys had quite a lot of changes too.
We had and we still have. I mean, the last 4 months. I mean, I'm getting ahead of myself, but we've I still have Tom, the CTO, is still working with me, and it's yeah. There's been, I don't know, like 8 or 9 lean canvases drawn up, and yeah. So it's
Lots of people talk about how like the product actually pivots, but you had a personal pivot at that moment.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, I realized that, you know, I'd come in here to learn from like some amazingly talented people, and then I realized I wasn't being coachable. Like I was like, whoa, you know, and then kind of was an epiphany, and it's kind of served me really well that I learned that lesson within about 48 hours of being in this industry, and I've kind of been careful to remind myself of that every day ever since.
And one thing too, I think to add, like a lot of companies, they don't really realize, because most entrepreneurs are super persistent when they come in. This is their idea, this is the problem, this is what I want to solve. And Startup Weekend sort of introduces Lean Startup to them, specifically when it comes to customer validation. So the biggest thing that we don't want to see companies do is we don't want them to be hiding in their own little corner, building the thing that they think works. We want them to be specifically going on the streets, going wherever, going online, sending out surveys, actually talking to people to prove that someone wants their product and someone will pay for it. Because if you can't prove those things, why are you building the thing you are? And when it comes to a weekend, it's totally possible to do that validation. Like, Phil, you guys got over 500 followers on Twitter. Yeah. In probably less than a day. Like, you got several different surveys sent out, too. Same with you guys. That's the biggest thing that I'd say when Startup Weekend comes in mind, is that we push potential entrepreneurs to go out and get out of their comfort zone. Because most people wouldn't go on the street and talk to a stranger. But if you're thinking about starting your own company, that's a pretty good skill set to get comfortable with. So there's a lot of these informal pieces that's all part of that experiential learning that Startup Weekend offers.
So how did like the rest of the weekend kind of go? You guys all went and joined your teams, and then you started building product. Did you guys run into some technical hurdles? Did you guys have any team obstacles that you had to get past? What were some of like the ups and lows of the startup roller coaster, which have occurred over that 54 hours, but mainly during like the product period, say like midday Saturday or afternoon Saturday or evening Saturday, or right before you're about to go pitch your product? I'll start with you, Phil.
The biggest problem we had, and it's a problem that we learned from drastically, is we started building before we knew what we were actually building. And so what would happen was our developers would get something and they'd get it half done, and we'd be like, actually, no, we don't need any of that. And
They love you.
That's pretty normal to startup.
that's a problem a lot of people have, yeah. And that was easily the best lesson that we got out of Startup Weekend. The idea that you have to really know your customer before you build anything, or else you're just going to be throwing your money away.
You can give your startups or your developers exposure to the other side too, because normally they would only be involved in the building phase, but now it's like, we don't want to build just yet. How about you get involved with on the customer validation piece? Then you know and understand what you're building in phase 2.
What about yourself, Tom?
In developing the product, yeah, it's the same thing Phil said. Developing the product wasn't an issue. We really, he's a genius, and he can build just about anything he needs to. So he put it together, I think, in about 12 hours. And it was really just, something that was going to build a grocery list for you and a meal plan and keep track of what's in your fridge. And just basically simplify your life and make it so that, it's 3 o'clock on a Monday and you want to go home and you want to make a healthy meal, and your app's going to tell you what you've got in the fridge, what you might have to pick up at the grocery store, and how to cook it. And it really didn't take him long to put that together, but it's the exact same thing of we needed to figure out a small enough chunk that people would actually want. And so we spent a lot more time trying to find people to talk to about that than we did building it, really.
Excellent. So Sally, tell us about the final day. What's happening? Like, everyone's finishing up their projects, or getting their pitches ready. You have to go in front of an auditorium, and you're going to get judged. So can you run us through that whole idea?
Yeah, exactly. And over the weekend, I try to prep the companies for that. It's not, everything doesn't fall to just that one day. Like, the sad part is that these companies and these startups have worked hours and hours on their projects and their product, but they only have 5 minutes to showcase the work. So sometimes it's sort of an unfair advantage, but when you think of accelerators like 400 startups, their pitches are 4 minutes long, and they work on them for 3 months. So it's sort of, how well can you sell the audience on what your final product is? I sort of try to put firm timelines with them. So before the actual official presentation spot, I get them to do like tech checks. So specifically, get in front of the room, make sure you know how to hook up your computer, and just run through your presentation at least once in front of a empty crowd, for example. And we start sending mentors into the room specifically, one after another. Because the startups should be going through their pitch at least 10, 20 times before they do it. Because at the end of the day, it's only a 5-minute pitch. So it's pretty easy that way. We usually pick a combination of different judges from around the community. So experienced entrepreneurs, potential VCs or angels, to really grind the companies. So is it a realistic business plan? Did you do your market validation and customer validation? Did you build something? All these different aspects are considered when it comes to the judging process. And the companies know well ahead of time what they're being judged on.
So Tom, tell us about how that day was going for you. The panic beforehand, getting everything ready, the lead up, and the pitch.
Yeah, it was a rush. I really enjoy high pressure situations, so it was kind of a blast for me. We had a smaller team, so we were able to break the project into like the key components, which was we had Ashley working on the presentation, and Tom building the product. And then me basically just trying to make sure they were both good to go and trying to add some support. And then also just going and finding mentors to add some weight to our team. You know, unlike Phil, who's with his silver tongue of ability to pull 14 team members in, I had 3. So I kind of had to be a little bit creative in getting mentors down and getting them to almost become team members for a little bit and help us out. Yeah, it was a fantastic a day, and the other nice thing that we did, we decided, because there was only 3 team members, we were all going to present. And something that I kind of learned in Startup Weekend was it's not so much the idea, it's your team, it's the strength of your team. And so what better way to convince the judges that you have a strong team, but to let everyone do a portion of the presentation, which of course is something that you can only pull off if you've got a smaller team. So we had to use that as a strength. In order to be competitive. So it was a really. I remember leaving after, like, we got second, and I was just like, I was floored. I'm like, I can't even believe we pulled this off. And this is awesome. Because I saw Phil's pitch, and I'm like, oh man, we're doomed. Like we're just. But and I remember walking out of the building, and I had to go train some people, because you got to pay the bills, and just being like walking on cloud 9, like it was an amazing experience. So.
The funny part from my experience with Startup Weekends too is that the companies that usually struggle the most, usually Saturday afternoon, Saturday evening, are some of the teams that do the best by the time Sunday, because those are the ones that are actually suffering and are sort of like, oh my God, we have 12 hours left, we better get done, and they really become a lot more productive than some of the other teams. because I'd say about half the startup weekends I've gone to, the teams that were just about to fall apart Saturday night were the ones that always placed in top 3.
Yeah. And
So.
well, that's true because we were like fighting like cats and dogs.
Oh yeah.
Because we have these like very passionate people with like that actually cared about the space. We're like, no, we actually really do want to help people.
Yeah.
So I think you're wrong. I'm like, well, I think you're wrong. and yeah, like I remember saying at least 3 or 4 times, like, guys, I really appreciate that we are actually arguing about this because it shows you that everybody really gives a crap about it.
And it's a big problem to solve.
And that's the best thing about the startup scene is like everybody is actually out to try to make the world a little bit better.
Yeah,
and that's the nicest thing to see.
Yeah, it's true.
How was your last day?
Hectic. A lot of me running around pretending not to be scared. Well, the same thing like Tom was just saying. Whenever we saw the pitches, we were saying the exact same thing. Like, well, I don't think we got this anymore. Like, you know, because you work on your idea for 48 hours, but you forget that they're working on their ideas. And the fact that what they pitched initially, you're like, yeah, I got that. But what they come up with, you're like, oh, was not ready for this new idea that's actually well developed, well refined, pretty well researched, and really impressed with it.
Pretty secretive too. Like no one really knew how the other teams were developing because you were working so closely with your own team and with your own idea that like you were already in silos. Like you were in a room.
We didn't have time. Like we came out for air maybe 2 or 3 times, and the rest of the time we were just in there. So. Yeah.
So what was it like when you guys did the presentation, and then you got the announcement that you actually won the competition?
I never won anything before, so I know that was really confusing. Like, so I don't know. I didn't really know what to do. I got up there like you're supposed to shake his hand. I was like, okay, like that was the biggest thing. But no, it was good. It was just, like I don't know what to say with like just honestly, it was great. The biggest thing that came out of Startup Weekend was yes, we won tickets to Montreal and Startup Fest, and it was very nice. But the biggest thing was the exposure we got to all the great individuals such as yourselves that now I know pretty personally. And I value that relationship so much more than whatever we won.
Speaking about, you went to Startup Festival and you're still continuing this product today, right? Mm-hmm. Where is the product today? What are you doing with it?
I'm really excited, actually. We've convinced, yeah, I know.
Persuaded?
Fredericton has seen the benefit in allowing our product to actually be rolled out throughout all of downtown Fredericton. We're rolling out a pilot project here August 6th. And in St. John, we're planning on launching something. We're not really sure if it's going to be in the meter displays as well, or the pay and display units they have. We're in talks with a company out of Montreal and figuring out our partnership right now. And we might actually launch in all of St. John's downtown infrastructure come September, potentially.
So what is the product today that you are currently piloting?
The biggest thing we do is we provide a mobile parking payment system for smaller municipalities. The way we do this is we focus on the individual. We believe that the most important thing is not that you're parking downtown, it's who's parking downtown.
Gotcha. Yeah. What about you, Tom? What's the lessons that you've learned, and where's your product and idea today?
Well, right now we're just busy acquiring beta users. Like we're just we've got a trial that's fairly small scale, but we are able to service people with Willow, which started out as A.L.I.E in Startup Weekend. We did a number of pivots. I mean, we've also changed the team members around a bit, and learned a lot about that, about how to structure a strong team that's going to actually it's going to execute and actually, just get things done. So that's something that's been pretty interesting. I mean, I'm kind of just shocked that 4 months have gone by, because it kind of seems like we were in this room like 10 minutes ago. But and then as I'm thinking, like, what have you learned in the last 4 months? I'm like, how long do you got? Where do I start? I learned not everybody that's a mentor is necessarily someone you want to listen to. Like, you ask 2 people their opinion, they're going to tell you the exact opposite thing. So you listen to one person say everything needs to scale. Turns out what we do, it doesn't need to scale right away. It needs to be able to scale in like 3 months. So our beta is really almost like, it's me interacting with people, gaining a ton of market information, but also using a lot of off-the-shelf software that we're using to build Willow to also service people. So we're able to connect with people in a variety of ways, automatically send reminders, do all sorts of cool things, and offer basically the services that that I used to offer as a coach, but now at a fraction of the cost. And that's just it. You know, we're only adding 1 or 2 users a day, but it seems to be kind of like nobody's saying no, which is kind of awesome.
Just to jump in there, I actually signed up for Willow too.
Yeah.
And, actually, like at first I was a little bit, I didn't really believe you could turn a virtual coach through your phone. But actually, once I started using it, I picked up the software myself, and now I use it as a project management tool.
Yeah.
Like it's actually pretty useful.
Yeah, it's not like we knew we weren't going to be able to develop all of the tools we needed, so we just had to go and find stuff and then bring it together. So it's me keeping all of a couple different software systems interacting with. So, you know, we can really see how we're going to build something awesome, and how it's not out there yet. So it's a really cool position to be in right now. Yeah.
So Sally, you've done many startup weekends globally around the world. What was the major difference that you've seen with Startup Weekend New Brunswick, and where are you today?
I've done startup weekends everywhere from Shanghai to LA to Waterloo, Cincinnati, and New Brunswick, and sort of across the globe. So it's pretty unique when you get to compare different cities. The piece when it comes to Startup Weekend New Brunswick is that I actually get to see what happens to these startups after Sunday. Because the normal part is, I don't know what the startups in Shanghai are doing because it's a little bit harder to keep track of. But around here, it's guys like Phil and Tom that I can actually see the development. And 4 months later, they're still working on those projects and those companies and startups. So it's this whole evolution that I actually get to see firsthand. And for my end, when it comes to personally what I'm doing now, I never expected a year ago that I'd be in this position that I am now in terms of launching this brand new accelerator called Accelerate. And it's incredible because these are some of the guys that are eligible to apply, and that could potentially be the next and first cohort that it's based in Fredericton. So it's neat to see my personal interests of helping out Startup Weekend bridge to what our community needs in Fredericton and in New Brunswick.